Good evening and welcome to Weekender on Sunday. I'm your host, Sunil Kaushal, and it's a privilege to come onto your screens wherever you are in the part of the globe, New Zealand, in Asia, Americas, or Europe. Thank you so much for allowing us to come to your rooms, to your homes, and to on your phones or on your tablet and computer. Today's discussion, we will be joined by 4 members of Parliament from the Labour, Duncan Webb, from National Honourable Mark Mitchell, from Greens Honourable Julian Genter, and from ACT Damien Smith. But what's on everyone's mind at the moment is what's going to happen for Christmas? Will we be celebrating it on the beach like most of the Kiwis do, or will it be at home? Recently, Dr. Turner has been quoted as saying the question of when the country opens up from lockdowns is not a medical one or a health one, but it's a political question. We don't need more mandates. We need more support now to the communities, the health sectors that are really working their butts off at the moment to see if they can go out there and support those people. And talking about support and vaccination, counties Manukau just reached their first 90% target. There's about 27 days till the whole country reaches the 90% for the second dose. Does this mean that Auckland, which is the capital hub or financial hub, capital of New Zealand, will be opened up before the 1st of December, or will it still be near Christmas? Now, yesterday at the Labour Party conference, the Prime Minister in Q&A said that that Aucklanders won't be spending Christmas at home, but there is a plan. Again, for so many times we've heard those statements, but there's no concrete plan yet. It's being developed. And if you are someone who's been locked up for 12 weeks in Auckland, the question is, why has it been so late in making these plans? Did we not know Delta was coming into New Zealand? Businesses are struggling, especially small businesses. Yes, the big corporates have money, as we have recently seen. The banks have made heyday, especially during lockdowns, during COVID. Their profits have gone enormous, 44% for one bank. Yet, the common man on the street is struggling, especially in Auckland. The hairdressers, the saloon, the hospitality people, the banks won't lend them anymore. Actually, the banks have hardened the way their funds that they can deliver funds. So it's becoming really tough. What's going to happen, especially when this is the bumper season for sole traders, for businesses? Christmas is coming. We know there's a big shortage globally for packaging and for transportation. So it would be an ideal situation for local businesses to make some money and recoup. Yet we are still in lockdown. I would like to welcome all the panel members now to join me. From Labour, it's Duncan Webb, from National, Mark Mitchell, and from Greens, Julian Genter, and from ACT, Damien Smith. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for taking time out on Sunday. It's been a really good day here in Auckland, and people have been out there on the beaches. You wouldn't think it's level 3 at the moment, and I think down in Christchurch, which is level 2, people are really enjoying, and especially in Wellington also. So we do feel that we are in a jail. Duncan, do you think the Labour Party has a plan for Aucklanders?
Oh, look, absolutely. And I can tell you, you won't be swimming at the beach in Christchurch anytime soon. It's a bit colder than lovely Auckland. And look, really appreciate the fact that 12 weeks in lockdown is really, really hard, not only on people who just want to get out and see friends and family, but also businesses, as you said. The plan is really clear. And the plan is that when we get to a vaccination level that is workable, that is safe, and that means that if there's an outbreak, we can manage it and our hospitals won't be overwhelmed, that's when we can open up. in that what's been called the traffic light system, it's really clear. There's a green, orange, and red. If it's red, we're going to need a lockdown. If it's orange, then if we're vaccinated, we're going to be able to live life pretty normally. And look, we're really lucky in Christchurch in the South Island and much of the country where we're essentially in green. We're almost going away around our daily lives normally. But look, absolutely, the response is about protecting people's health, and by doing that, we've protected the economy. I do want to recognise Auckland businesses that are doing it hard, and I really want to respect the ones that are looking after their employees. The wage subsidy has been increased, the resurgence payment's been doubled. We're giving all the support we absolutely can, and we really need to get through
Duncan,
this.
I'll come to that. Sorry, but Julianne, you seem to be agreeing with that. But don't you think that the plan has been left too late?
Look, the Green Party has actually been very supportive of the government's approach up until very recently, and we've probably just started to depart slightly from the approach that they're taking, in that we feel that there should have been more financial support for the vulnerable over the last lockdown in Auckland, and that also we would probably prefer to have a higher vaccination target for vulnerable people before opening up. I think, to my family who are in the States, for example, I know many people watching this will know people who've lived overseas and they had a really rough year in 2020 and 2021. We were quite fortunate that we were able to live life quite normally for most of that time. And I don't want to underestimate how difficult it has been for Aucklanders in these past few months. But ultimately, if we open up too soon, we will lose more freedom as a country, and it will be harder for businesses as a country. And that's why it's so important. We're very close. We're very close to the vaccination targets. But if we don't make sure that Māori and Pacifica reach at least 90%, probably a bit higher, you should be aiming for 95%, then we're all going to suffer from having more outbreaks than what we would like. Children still can't be vaccinated. They could have lifelong health impacts if they're exposed to COVID. And our health system, of course, if our hospitals are full of people who are unvaccinated, who are sick with COVID, it will mean that health services are not as available for other things. If you're in a car accident, if you're recovering from surgery, it will put enormous strain on our health system. Yeah. So I think it's incumbent on the government to make sure that there's sufficient financial support for businesses and for all people who are in difficult circumstances. Sunil, you did mention the banks are doing very well at the moment, and I think probably the government could have thought a little more ambitiously about how we all share the cost of combating this pandemic together.
Sure. I'll come back to you, Julianne. There's a point I need to talk to you about. But Mark, you are from Auckland, and I have heard you say that businesses are bleeding. And, I have talked with a few businesses that are saying that $1,500 is not enough. Do you think that the lockdown has been too long and there was no plan? From what Duncan has explained, the red light and different things, and to get 90% vaccinated, do you disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree with the vaccination target. That's really important. I think that just supporting Julianne's comment is that get out there and get vaccinated. And there's a whole, I know that people hold different reasons and for why they don't want to get vaccinated, unless it's a medical reason, and there's a reason why you shouldn't medically. Then if you care and consider the rest of the country and the rest of your Kiwis, then go in there and get vaccinated. Some people are protesting against the government. Forget about the government. Just get in there and get vaccinated. It's the best thing that you can do in terms of helping every other Kiwi start to open up and start to return to some sort of normality. So I just encourage anyone that can.
So what you're saying, Mark, what you're saying is don't make the vaccination a political thing. It should be rather a medical and a health thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're watching it happening in my electorate and through Auckland and the rest of the country, is that we're starting to become divided. And we're starting to people are starting to target each other, and actually it's not healthy, it's not good. It's because there's a lot of pressure sitting inside the country at the moment. And you asked Sunil about the length of the lockdown. We didn't need to be in a lockdown this long. It is negatively impacting just about every Aucklander in a different way, and it's actually impacting people around the rest of the country as well, certainly economically, because it means that Aucklanders can't move around the country and they're a big part of the business in the Hawke's Bay or Queenstown or areas that rely on tourism and hospitality.
Mark, you just said that we have been too long in the lockdown. What
Yeah.
what would National Party have done different?
I think, Sunil, just to highlight the reason why number one, I feel like the government has been reacting and in a contingency type mindset from day one, 18 months ago, when COVID first came into this country. And I can talk to that in more detail later if you want me to, but they should have very quickly gone into a proactive planning and heading into a sustainable model that would have set us up much better as a country to deal with COVID and the variants that we're going to see and that we're having to deal with now. But let me just give you one really clear example, Sunil, is that the day before we went into level 4 lockdown with Delta, I was at a function with our Indian community at Auckland Central with Dr. Bloomfield, okay? And there were 700 of us there, and he stood up and he said, look, we can celebrate. Look, we got 700 of us that are able to come and join each other, and the rest of the world locked down, and we don't have to worry about it. And, you know, we've put ourselves in this very good position. The very next day, we went into a level 4 lockdown, and Aucklanders are still stuck in it. And that's because I feel that there was a high level of complacency that had crept in, and there wasn't enough urgency around actually getting the vaccines in and getting the population vaccinated. That's why we are still sat in a level 3 lockdown now, unable to move, with enormous pressure coming on right across everyone that's affected by this. SMEs, small businesses in particular. I completely support the government coming out right from day one and ensuring that there is a proper support package put around them. But unfortunately, it was incremental and it was on the fringes, and it's allowed people to limp it along without much certainty and unable to plan. And that support package should have been clear, it should have been long, and it should have been substantial.
Thanks. Damien, Mark just said that the government has been complacent. Do you agree?
Well, just to go back to your question, Sunil, about Christmas, very clearly, Jacinta Ardern hasn't made a decision whether Aucklanders will need a time slot to leave the city. And she's in the middle of a spat between Robertson and Hipkins. It feels like decisions, tomorrow is the 8th of November, it feels like decisions are just getting made on morning breakfast shows. And, you know, to book a time slot out of Auckland, I mean, it's been roundly criticised as being bonkers. And it's not often we agree with Grant Robertson, but we think Jacinta should take his side and get on with things. I mean, Aucklanders need to plan for Christmas. All they're getting is uncertainty. Nobody can make plans. Kiwis can't come home to the country. It's, you know, it's not just a team of 5 million, it's a team of 6 million. And the vaccine certificates aren't ready yet. So, you know, our strategy is we believe that December 1, for that date, everyone should have the opportunity to be vaccinated, and we should open up and get on with life. And that would give the Kiwis all the certainty we need this summer.
Julia, do you agree that December 1, Auckland should be open?
No, I think it really depends on what the vaccination rates are. And I mean, maybe this is reflecting the fact that I'm a mother of a young child who can't be vaccinated. But I think that we should be taking a cautious approach, because ultimately the health of our people is at stake. And if we don't have our health, what do we have? And there can be ongoing economic costs from ongoing health issues if people are exposed to COVID unnecessarily. And I know that, like, we've gotten vaccination rates up very, very high, very quickly in New Zealand, but not everybody and not the most vulnerable have been able to be vaccinated.
But the problem is that, I mean, I have a daughter who's fully vaccinated. With children, Mr. Bloomfield is on the record as saying nothing's going to happen until next year. So what we're talking about is right now, we're talking about certainty for Aucklanders and the rest of the country. And, you know, I'd like to hear the panel's view on whether we think there is light at the end of the tunnel for going to the beach at Christmas, which was the original question.
Yeah, and I think the answer to that is there absolutely is. And Mark and Julianne and I are all at one about how to get there, which is vaccinations. The Damien's view, which seems to be let's open the door, would send us back about 18 months and put us in the position that the UK was in the middle of the last year, with COVID ravaging the community deaths skyrocketing, hospitals overwhelmed, and ordinary surgeries put on a hold whilst we deal with a full ICU. So we've got to do this carefully, and I don't accept that a government which makes decisions on the information available when it's available is reactive. It's called being nimble and being absolutely up to date with the best advice we can get, learning the lessons from the mistakes and the tragedies that have happened overseas. So I think we're well on track. Vaccination's everything, though. And look, once we get to those rates, and I know the vaccination certificates aren't there yet, but what we're working on is a really important app. We've got to have an approach for people that don't have access to smartphones as well. So that's being worked on, and that'll be a really important part of it. And the businesses that I've spoken to were crying out for the government to give them guidance on that, and we're very relieved when they were told that, yes, there is guidance, and here's what it's going to look like.
The
Mark,
is fully supporting vaccine.
Sorry, I'll come back to you, Damien. But Mark,
Yeah.
do you think that vaccination is the real silver bullet here, or should there be something else? Because let's say the unvaccinated, or let's say those who make not unvaccinated, those who make their choices not to get vaccinated will always be there. Okay, 95% of Auckland Central is vaccinated, right? But there's still 5% that won't get vaccinated. That's a choice. We can't force our choice to them. But does that mean that we be held hostage by those who don't want to get vaccinated?
Well, I mean, that's why we have a target to reach, and that's 90%. Then we have to get on with it and reopen as much as we can. But I think that Duncan alluded to another big issue that we have to think about, and the government, in my view, has not put the proper planning or resources into, and that's our health system. And I can tell you now, right now in Auckland, we've got 192 ICU beds that are available without the staff to actually be able to manage them as of today. That's not enough to deal with a major Delta outbreak in the community. And we've got nurses that are deeply fatigued, that are on a pay freeze because public servants our public service has gone on a pay freeze. And we're competing with much better wages.
Mark, to be fair to the government, right? Those people, majority of them, and I'm saying majority of the 290, etc., right? Over 200 are unvaccinated, right?
No, sorry, Sunil, I think you understood. I was talking about the availability of ICU beds at the moment, so intensive care unit beds that would be required if we had an outbreak of Delta within any of the 3 DHBs in Auckland. And by the way, the problem there too is that they don't have the staff to actually to be able to treat and manage the people that would be filling those beds. So the health system needs an enormous injection of investment into it, and both it's also people, without a doubt. Because if we don't,
we'll all agree on that. Go on, Julianne.
Yeah, Julianne.
I completely agree with Mark saying here, and that's what I was saying as health spokesperson when National was in government. I mean, the reality is that Labour's put a lot more money into the health system in the last 4 years than the national government put in over 9 years. And it's been several decades of underinvestment in our public services and not having centralized kind of workforce planning that could have helped us deal with the shortage of ICU nurses and doctors and the staff we need. So I agree with what you're saying, Mark. I just think it's hard to blame that on this government and to believe that it would be different if National was in power.
And the fact is as well that we're working flat out, and we have been for some time. We're putting enormous amounts of money into the health system, more than we ever have, both in response to COVID and generally. We've opened up our borders, special places for nurses. There is no pay freeze. That's absolutely fictitious, and Mark shouldn't be saying it. He knows it's not true. The nurses are in bargaining. And so, look, yes, we accept that COVID puts huge strain on our health system. We're working every day. We've got, look, our DHBs are doing the best work they can. And look around what's going on with the vaccinations. That's been run by the DHBs, and they're doing a great job. Just don't accept anything that Mark said. Yes, we've got strain coming.
Okay, I'll get Mark to reply to it. Duncan, I'll get Mark to reply.
Just a right of reply. First of all, to Julianne's comment is that if you go back and look at the stats, under National, elective surgeries went up. People stopped going to Australia for cancer treatment, and we had a much better health service, right?
And there was no public service.
Okay, let Mark finish. I'll get you in. I'll get you the right of reply.
Just to speak to that, and Duncan,
public health was totally destroyed under National, and that's what we needed to be in a position to respond to the pandemic.
I don't accept that. If you go back and actually look at the data, if you actually look at
got rid of the Public Health Commission,
under National, we had a much better, more efficient service that was providing the services that actually the communities needed. And I saw that myself in my own community up here with the investment into North Shore Hospital and the new mental health unit that we had under National, right? So I've seen it and I've witnessed it, and people weren't complaining about the public health system at all under National.
Damien, I'll ask Damien. Damien, do you think our health system is under-resourced?
Well, I think we've got to meet the COVID task, and I admire all the frontline workers and doctors that have risen to this task. We're 70 to 75% vaccination rates, but a lot of that's been done outside the normal health system as well. So we've got to find a way to live with COVID or these viruses longer term, because I don't think this is necessarily going to be the last one. So we need Minister Little to put a hybrid model together, which allows the health system to operate, and at the same time, we find other ways of letting people isolate and treating them in home.
Yes. Duncan, there's a question for you from one of our viewers to say that he's a resident of Christchurch and not allowed to enter the borders. He's lost 18 months of his time and been lived here for 6 years. What's your message?
Yeah, well, look, there's many people. So if he's left 18 months ago, I mean, we'll make one comment, and that is, if he left 18 months ago, he left in the middle of a global pandemic, when the New Zealand government across the board was clear that if you left New Zealand, there may be difficulties coming back. Having said that, I want to absolutely acknowledge all of the people who are overseas. The borders are closed. I mean, I think that's the thing that sometimes people don't realise. The borders are closed with very limited exceptions. So there are exceptions on humanitarian grounds, business grounds, some sporting and cultural grounds. But we've managed to let people in, about 100 and I think 30,000 people in since the pandemic started. And we've managed to contain COVID pretty effectively up until the recent outbreak. That has been the absolute backbone of why our economy has worked. So I don't apologise for that. But look, and of course we've got to prioritise people. And the first priority is New Zealand citizens, and then permanent residents, and then people who have something special to bring. So to Jay, I absolutely recognise the many individual stories of real hardship and sometimes heartbreak. But our borders and keeping our borders safe has been the absolute cornerstone of protecting New Zealanders, including our economy.
Mark, you were disagreeing.
I just find it amazing that Duncan's default setting is to blame the person that's had to travel overseas and the 30,000 other Kiwis that are trying to get back in to New Zealand. Right from day one, this government should have moved to build purpose-built MIQ facilities. It would have been much safer, and it would have been a lot more efficient, and it would have opened up a lot more options for people being able to get home. They never did that. I remember on day one of this being on the Mike Hoskins show and saying the first thing this government has to do is focus on investing heavily into purpose-built MIQ facilities. Take Darwin, for example, where we just helped the person get up there. They repurposed the camp up there, 3,000 beds, run highly efficiently, and it's having a massive positive impact on their economy and people trying to get in and out of the state. So
there's two things I'd say about that. The first one is this, that we've got a much better COVID response and outcome than Australia. The second is that we've let in more people per capita than Australia has. And why would you build a brand new facility when you've got empty international hotels which are suitable for it? So rather than building something new, we can support operators, tourists, cleaners, cooks and jobs by using the existing hotels. It's been a very good solution and better than Australia's.
But to that, don't you think someone returning back who's double jabbed, why do they need to spend 14 days in MIQ? Whereas we are sending people with COVID to isolate at home, and then they are dying. Why?
Yeah, look, and the time will come when we transition to a different management, but we're not there yet. So that's the main point. Because if we just open the borders without controlling, who's got
Duncan,
COVID and
is
who
18
hasn't,
months
we know
not
that
enough?
we know that people can be vaccinated and carry COVID. So we've still got to be cautious. We absolutely need to hit those vaccination targets before we can really think about opening up our borders. We have made some changes. We've shortened the length of MIQ that's required because we're learning more about particularly the Delta strain. So yes, there's changes. Yes, there will be transitions, but not right now.
Damien, do you think people should be allowed from overseas, double jabbed, to isolate at home for 7 days, or should they occupy the space in MIQ, have a lottery system, whereas 29,000 odd people are waiting for 3,000 beds?
I don't see the problem if they're fully vaccinated and they come home. Then they can go into isolation. But, the biggest thing is that we can't let it lock down our major city anymore. And, we need to now sort of play the longer term game and build some confidence in the management approach about this. Eradication no longer stacks up. So we must have a policy that reduces transmission, hospitalization, and potentially death from COVID. So if you come back from overseas, I don't understand why if you're double vaccinated, you can't move through the system.
Julianne, do you agree that the MIQ is working?
A couple of things. I just want to say, I think that there's a belief that if we open up the lockdown, things will go back to like how they were in level 1. And I think people just need to be aware that that's not how it's going to be. When COVID is loose in the community, even if we have high vaccination rates, there will be people who choose not to go out to bars and restaurants because they're worried about the health of their children. We don't live life normally. We have to be masked. We have to have a much better ventilation. We have to do a lot of other things too. So when it comes to MIQ, I completely understand why the government took the approach they did, and it worked very well for us for about 18 months. The demand to come back into New Zealand has really outstripped the supply of MIQ spaces. And I think they are working, and I'm not here to defend the government. We've raised lots of issues about the prioritization of MIQ spaces. We'd like to see people who need to come back into the country for reasons of pregnancy, or they need their partners to be able to join them. It should be a criteria for emergency allocation.
Sure, Julianne, but is it a matter of trust?
I think the difficulty is, one, how do you establish if somebody is truly double vaccinated? Because what is the system that we're using to recognize what vaccinations have happened in other countries? So there's that problem initially. Secondly, we know that double vaccinated people can still carry and spread COVID. They're at lower risk of doing that than non-vaccinated people, much lower risk, but it can still happen. So if we have people coming in and then traveling to other parts of New Zealand where we don't have community spread of COVID, then we very really risk having more outbreaks from that. And so I think those are the two logistical issues that need to be sorted.
Okay.
And of course, in theory, people could isolate at home. It's just getting them from, through the border to their home, wherever that is in New Zealand, without them spreading COVID.
I'll come to you, Damien, just a second. But for Julianne, since you raised this point, since this lockdown, right, there's hardly been cases at the border, right? So it's easier for you to catch COVID in a MIQ situation than while you're isolating at home. Is that not right?
I don't know if you could say that, but I do think that it would be great if we have a way of establishing that people genuinely are double vaccinated, that they have a negative test on day 0, that we shorten the MIQ requirements, or we find some way for them to isolate at home. That would be ideal. Absolutely ideal.
Can I just
do it in a way that doesn't spread COVID across the country?
So Damien, and then I'll come to you, Duncan. Damien.
I mean, this is one of the issues, that we've got to start using technology to test people, and they're coming from other countries where it's in advance of where we are in some situations. So as long as that step can be proven, then there's an A and a B you can go through. So MIQ is useful for isolation if you haven't got that certainty, but going straight to your home is a different proposition.
Sure,
Just,
Duncan.
yeah, I'm at risk of agreeing with Damien, and it does happen occasionally, but usually over what biscuits we choose at Finance Committee. But look, I just want to say we are trialling home isolation, right? And I just thought that was a really glaring omission that no one had mentioned. And the two kind of ingredients of it are, obviously, it's the vaccination status, but also coming from a low-risk country where we can be relatively confident about vaccination status. So we're trialling it with with Australians for a very good reason, and that may well work. And it will then, that will obviously take some of the burden off. We did do some of this earlier, and it didn't go well because of trust issues, as you've said. So that's obviously going to be something. And as Damien said, we'll be wanting to use technology. I mean, we're not going to be putting ankle bracelets on anyone, but overseas they've done things like, using mobile phone locators and things like that, and calling in and so on and so forth. So yes, look, we're going to have a look at it, and it may well be an important part of managing COVID into the future.
The thing is, Sunil, is that if you look at just a purely a risk-based approach, which you should be, and doing a proper analysis in terms of what's happening in the border and what's happening in the community, we've got the ridiculous situation that right now we've got over 1,000 people with Delta home isolating, right? And I had two that broke their home isolation rules about 10 days and ended up in the centre of Orewa. It could have been a complete disaster, and we had a very good Samaritan that made an intervention, and two police officers. They weren't informed that the person was Delta, and they ended up in isolation themselves. And then we've got the ridiculous situation of people coming in double vaxxed with a recent test coming into the country. If you did an individualised risk assessment of them, probably they're much, much lower in terms of risk and can be trusted in doing a home isolation, and they're not. And so quite simply, the system is broken. And the system is broken. It took me 6 days to get a proper response from the MOH in terms of how I had two Delta positive people breaking home isolation rules, one of them wanted to use public transport, the other one could have ended up in the middle of town.
Duncan, is what Mark's saying is that the system is broken because we are letting people home isolate. Yeah.
And look, I can appreciate Mark's perspective because he's stuck up there in Auckland and locked down where COVID is, in the community. And, and Mark, I just want to recognise that. But the fact of the matter is that people are coming to New Zealand from all over the world to all parts of New Zealand. And so whilst it may be that the risks in Auckland, in the sense that we've got COVID in the community and therefore, what's the balance is one question. If you've got people coming to Wellington, Christchurch, Queenstown, Dunedin, and all over the country, these places are COVID free and we want to keep them that way. So MIQ has to be used. And what people in MIQ are doing is perhaps going to Auckland for their MIQ, then jumping on a plane and going home. So we just need to be really cautious about that. And look, it's all very nice to be laissez-faire and think we should just throw the doors open and just let people give them the keys to their apartment. But the fact is, this is how we've got this far and managed to have an unemployment rate that's just about the lowest in the world and an economy that's working.
Duncan,
can I just put a...
Okay, last word from Julianne, and then we'll move to the finance topic. We've had enough. Julianne.
I mean, I think it's both right? I mean, we want to take a risk-based approach, and there's some logistical issues that make it difficult. But I just want to put in the context, because I don't think it's been reported much here in New Zealand about Australia. I mean, since the pandemic started, Australia did not allow its citizens to travel overseas. I mean, they took an incredibly strict approach. So they haven't had people leaving and coming back unless they had very special permission. And it's only very recently, I think, that they've moved to allow citizens or residents to leave the country. And they have been letting in fewer people per capita, way smaller percentage than we have. And you're not allowed to travel between states. I mean, no one from New South Wales can go to Queensland right now without 2 weeks managed isolation. And it's really difficult to get into those states that are COVID free. So I just think, yes, New Zealand's MIQ system could be better, and we're advocating for it to be better all the time. But really, we've had incredible freedom compared to most parts of the world.
Thank you. Damien, do you think that the businesses are at breaking point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been more exhaustive on their cash flows than the previous lockdown. And I don't know, for people that haven't been in Auckland, it's a pretty sad sight to see Look, we're supportive of all the packages that have been put in place. We believe that they have helped. But, it's all about the economy now and growing it and matching that up with the health solution. I know Duncan's going to bring up it's the lowest unemployment rate that there is, but something's happened with the employment statistics where they've sort of broken away from what used to be the job seeker numbers. And so I've lost a bit of confidence in Stats New Zealand. I think there's probably 50 to 100,000 people missing in the system. But, it's, again, it's the primary sector that's held this together. And I think the government should really...
Yeah, that's right, Damien. But what would ACT would have done different if you were a coalition partner with a National in the government?
We would have given people tax breaks to get them through.
How do tax breaks help if you're not making any money?
Yes, that was my question. Thanks, Julianne.
The tax rates that would apply to their income, we didn't expect them to be stuck in lockdown for 12 weeks or whatever it is. So there's only so many ways you can stimulate the economy. You tell me, Julianne, how else you do it. Now we've got a situation where debt's ballooned and inflation is going up. So, we need to start thinking now as politicians about how we actually rectify it.
Julianne, what do you write of reply? And I'll come to you, Duncan, and then to Mark. Julianne.
Well, there's one sector of the economy that's done phenomenally well out of all of this, and this is owning property, because property values have gone massively up. If we had something like a capital gains tax or wealth tax, that would be a revenue stream that would ensure some of that inflation was coming back to government to help pay off debt and to help fund public services. Ultimately, when people have to stay home, they can't trade. And most of what we measure in the economy is trading goods and services. A lot of that has to be done face to face. But the fundamentals of what the economy is the people. That's what the economy is. It's people. And so people are healthy and they're able to continue to be well and to be able to trade in the future. All they need is the ability to be able to buy food and have shelter during the time that they're required to stay home to stop the pandemic spreading. And the government provided some support for that to happen, but arguably more should have been done to say, we want to make sure everybody's got a secure shelter and they've got access to food and essential services during the time that we can't trade. And as soon as we can go back to trading, things bounce back really, really well and the economy does well. But ultimately, you can't fund public services unless you have progressive taxation. And one of the main things that we're missing in this country is a tax on capital gains or asset inflation.
Okay, Duncan, do you agree with Julianne?
Oh, look.
No. 30-second reply to that.
Yeah, Damien, I'll come to you.
It's the taxpayer.
I'm not surprised that Damien's pretty upset with the suggestion of a wealth tax because he does represent the wealth.
Well, you're already getting one because
let's get to the facts.
You're already getting it.
Fact is,
through the.
You turn soon, Damien.
Okay, Damien, 2
Can
seconds.
Can I make one point that separates ACT parties?
This is your last. This is your last two.
The taxpayer that's paying for this. All we're doing is redistributing.
Damien, I'll come to you, Duncan.
Yeah, be polite, Damien. Now, look, the fact of the matter is that the strategy was this: protect jobs. $4 billion was spent on the wage subsidy payment. And that was really important because it did two things. It meant that ordinary folks who had to pay their mortgages and so on weren't made unemployed. And that was really, really critical. At the same time, it gave businesses certainty. Those payments were made within 2 weeks of it being announced. This is unbelievable. Australia was wildly behind, and that's why their unemployment rate shot up. The other thing, and there's many other business supports, cash flow loans, debt hibernation, rental relief, resurgence payments. The money has poured in and our debt has gone up, but it's still well within fiscal, reasonable fiscal boundaries. The other thing to note is that there's been a lot of spending, and you can criticize some people criticize where it's gone, but there's been job creation. Jobs for Nature is a great example, where there's thousands of jobs which are kind of building out environmental infrastructure. And then there's jobs building other infrastructure. In Christchurch, they built a cancer facility, the YMCA Hotel for Hope. A whole lot of money's gone into projects all around the country. And what it's shown is that we've got a resilient economy. Now, there are businesses struggling. And the fact of the matter is, and I want to recognize this, that not every business is going to make it. But we're doing our best to make sure that within the money we've got available, every business that can get through this and be prepared to rebound when we get through the other side will.
Yeah, Mark, do you agree with Duncan that the government has borrowed money, which the coming generations will have to pay to get us out of this debacle?
Yeah, but we did have to do that, and there had to be support as we moved into a response to COVID, because businesses can do and normally do everything that they can to plan their future. But one thing, when decisions are taken out of their hands, then there has to be support that fills that void. So that had to happen. But there is good spending and there's bad spending. We could have a long debate around policy settings by this government in terms of what normally happens under Labour. There's a whole lot of money that gets flushed down the drain and nothing to actually show for it. The one thing I find really interesting is that Duncan beautifully sidestepped that question that you put to him around, does he support Julianne's idea around capital gains tax and more taxes being implemented? This is a classic.
But why shouldn't the owners of land and capital contribute? If they've seen their asset values inflate enormously, why don't they contribute back to the public health response?
Julianne, if you go and have a look who the biggest contributors are, it's the top end of town in terms of business, in terms of positive
only income, not assets.
You're actually
asset values have increased by billions of dollars, and that's all falling into private hands rather than being some of that coming back in a fair way. Doctors pay taxes on their paychecks, nurses pay. Why shouldn't the owners of capital pay a share of their profit back?
They do. They pay massive. They pay massive shares, more than the doctors and everyone.
They don't pay on the inflation in the asset value, Mark.
They pay massive amounts.
That's basic economics. It's a problem. It's a problem in New Zealand that around the rest of the world. That's why they have capital gains taxes. They have inheritance taxes. They have wealth taxes, because they believe in a fair society. And in New Zealand, our tax system is not fair.
Julianne, most Kiwis don't agree with you on that, because Labor wanted to introduce a capital gains tax, and they realised that they were going to lose the election unless they abandoned it, which they did. So
because National's been
that's why
encouraging everyone to think selfishly about their own capital gains rather than thinking, actually, earning lots of money is a privilege. And giving back to the community is a privilege that we should all be proud of.
But don't all of you think that the government's assets have also gone up?
Well, the government's balance sheet hasn't gone up, and that's because of the borrowing that's happened. So that is something that comes out every year, this financial accounts of the government. Now, whilst some of the assets might have been revalued upwards in terms of, say, real estate and so on, that's been well offset by the billions of dollars that have been borrowed. So our net worth has, I forget the exact numbers, but it's dropped by some billions of dollars because of the borrowing that we've engaged in. But, just like any household, when the weather turns bad, and the roof needs fixing, you don't just sit there and save money. You spend money to make sure you preserve what you've got.
So Duncan, you're borrowing money now. How do you intend to repay it?
That's a really good question, right? And if you think of it in terms of a business, when times are tough, you do need to borrow money to preserve your earning capacity into the future. And you want to borrow money in the best rates you can. And the fact of the matter is that, Grant Robertson and the Treasury went out recently over the past year or two and secured loans at some of the lowest interest rates that you could possibly imagine. So in fact, our interest bill, in terms of our cash flow as a country, our interest bill is lower than it has been historically, because the interest payable is very, very small compared to historically what's been the case. And this is long-term money that we've secured as well.
Yeah, Damien, if ACT and National was to come into power, how would you repay this debt?
Well, we'd have to reduce expenditure, and there's no other way around that.
Yeah, they want us to build purpose-built MI schools.
Julian, let him finish. Julian, I'll give you and let him finish.
Can I finish, Julian? I mean, we believe totally that there needs to be less debt on future generations, and our calculations show that we can deliver 11 billion savings, 23 billion less debt, and return to surplus by the end of this decade. And we need to get real about this now, because you've got to pay our way in life, and that's irrespective.
Would you cut benefits, Damien? Would you cut benefits?
No, we keep benefits as they are, and we've said that, and you know that, Duncan. So that's a cheap shot. So, so basically, but giving out $5 here and there is not really a strategy either. So, I mean, we've really got to create jobs now, and create high-paying jobs, and let the young people have a go in this country.
Okay, Mark.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. That investment technology and bringing through our entrepreneurs is really important. Re-engaging with the rest of the world, growing our trade, are all ways that we can grow and start to deal with debt. Having a go at Damien about being responsible with spending, I find, Duncan, I find it amusing that you're laughing at that when you guys give $2 million to the mongrel mob in Hawke's Bay.
That's fatuous. But let's agree on something, Mark, and that is that trade's really important. I think trade's a good point to make, though.
Well, trade's critically important for us. We're a trading nation, and so we're going to have to back ourselves as we emerge out of COVID to re-engage with the world in a really positive manner. But just very quickly, Sunil, in terms of, we're talking about SMEs, they are, our small and medium-sized businesses. They are the engine room of our economy. They are the people that fund the government and allow us to deliver services. And one of the big things that they run on actually is confidence, because they normally take enormous amounts of risk most of us aren't prepared to take on employees and try and grow their businesses. They don't like being reliant on the government at all. They're normally fiercely independent. The best thing that government can do is signal to them early and allow them to actually plan and know what's going on. That is not happening for them at the moment. And that has a massive negative impact on business confidence, which will have a flow-through effect. I think that our global supply chain, the government needed to make an intervention on this 12 months ago. They failed to do this. And it's just farcical that I had Poto Williams and Michael Wood in front of the Select Committee recently. I've been asking them this question for 9 months. What steps are the government taking to ensure that we can actually make sure that we've got a strong global supply chain, both for our exporters and also importers? Okay. And his answer to that was, Sunil, we managed to get a few more trains on from the ports of Tauranga. It's a complete joke, and you're going to see it's going to have a massive negative impact on New Zealand and Kiwis, because you watch inflation.
But isn't that more jobs?
What's that?
Well,
isn't it more jobs, having a train?
Well, that is true, but I do want to recognise Mark's point.
Let Mark finish it. I was asking Mark. I'll come to you.
The point is that I'm not talking. The problem that we've got is not with our internal supply chain, Sunil. It's with our global supply chain, with it's actually getting product in through our ports and getting products out. And we're a very small trading nation. We don't have the scope. We don't have the capacity to demand container places on ships. And with a type of global pandemic that we're seeing, with a massive disruption in our global supply chain, the government should have been far more proactive in stepping in and actually securing container spots for us and ensuring our place.
Yes, I mean, I can understand. Mark's right. There is a significant problem with supply chain. We know that, and we're seeing some real constraints around industry because of the difficulty getting goods, particularly getting goods in from overseas. But you can't just magic up container spots or ships. There's actually a global shortage of both containers and ships. You had to turn, Mark. There's actually a global shortage. And so, yes, we're working on getting more secure, routine shipping lines to New Zealand. But when there's a global shortage of shipping capacity and we're at the bottom of the world, that isn't easy. But I can assure you that work is being done in absolutely that space. And other fantastic, there's other things I want to say. First is there's been some great work done around free trade agreements. We've crossed the line with the UK. We're almost there with the EU. And I must say, it'd be great if we could work with India on the CTTPA, because that would be a huge leap forward as well. But so that's really, really important. And if we can do that and open up borders, lower tariffs, then there will be some real progress, and we're well positioned to do that.
Julianne, I'll come to you.
I want to say that I think we hear that we wouldn't have government if it weren't for business, but also we wouldn't have business and private enterprise if it weren't for our public investments in infrastructure, education, and health. Those things cannot exist without one another. So it's not that one exists before the other. The public investments that we make in things that benefit all of us, that are difficult to extract a commercial return from, but have wide public benefits, they benefit private industry. And the way that countries that have higher living standards than New Zealand do this is through progressive taxation, and they invest in those public goods. And I think the problem here with what we're hearing from the parties on the right is that they're arguing to combat the pandemic, we need government to step up in all of these areas. But at the same time, they're saying, but we need to cut government spending. And those two things can't happen at the same time.
No, Julie.
We actually do need effective government spending and investment in health services, education, infrastructure, coordinated infrastructure. The pandemic showed us how interconnected we all are. This all can't be sorted out through private enterprise and private individuals. We work together to combat the pandemic. We're going to have to work together to combat climate change. And I'd be interested in what Mark thinks about what's going to happen to global supply chains when climate change really starts to bite, because there is a climate crisis already affecting many other parts of the world. It's going to affect agriculture in New Zealand.
Okay, Mark,
and that's where we need coordinated government efforts.
Just very
Julian,
quickly.
I'll get Mark to reply to you, and then I saw Damien raising his hands,
Just
and then I'll ask all of you one question. Yes, Mark.
Thanks, Sunil. Sorry, just very quickly. It's the quality of spending, Julianne, and it's the decision that's made around that spending. And I would rather invested money earlier on in a quality MIQ system than a cycle way across the
well, that's not even happening, Mark. So it doesn't matter. But your highway north of Auckland was a bigger waste of money than the cycleway. So quality of spending, National's not great at it either.
That's an example of the wasteful spending that you would have
got away. It's just a talking point. It's rubbish. It's a rubbish.
Okay, let Mark finish. Julian, let Mark finish.
Yeah, I'm using that as a very good example of a massive waste of spending and money and prioritisation. Julianne's saying rubbish. Tell me, how does that benefit the SMEs, Julianne?
You could put, if you want to put the value for money test across all of the different infrastructure that's been invested in transport, National spent a ton of money on really low value road projects that don't benefit SMEs and don't make our transport system more effective. So I have no sympathy for you when you complain about one project because you think, oh, people who drive cars hate people who ride bikes, and therefore they think it's a waste of money to spend money on infrastructure.
Okay. I'll come to Damien now. He's been waiting patiently. Okay, I'll come to Damien now. Damien.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, somewhere along the line, we have to do two things. One is create conditions for growth, which I think Mark's touched on. I think we're a very modern economy that's got an opportunity to be a star economy in Asia. So the policy for the economy has to be growth now. Second thing is that, the government must admit that spending has to be brought under control and that the long-term trajectory is not healthy. So we've got the hard-working New Zealanders out there who want to contribute to that, and they're just confused by Wellington and what's going on. And I think we've got to trust the people and trust their entrepreneurial spirit. And in terms of green initiatives, we're supportive of that. Somewhere along the line, you've got to actually say to yourself, how much money have we got to spend? And how much money can we actually pay back? And, future-proof of things for like earthquakes, tsunamis, do the basics, wastewater pipes, and not get too highfalutin about, where we're going. So, to me, there's a day of reckoning coming and we've got to be ready for it.
Thank you. Look, just last question before you go, because I can see Ish Sodhi waiting in the lobby. We've got a big Blackcaps game on tonight against Afghanistan. Hopefully we can make it to the semifinals. But last question to all of you, and I'll start with Duncan. Duncan, do you think Aucklanders and, especially Aucklanders, obviously, do you think they'll spend Christmas at home or at the beach?
Oh, look, I think
outside Auckland.
Well, I hope they'll spend it at the beach all around the country, and I hope that they get out there, get vaccinated, and that we can absolutely get on to living a life a bit closer to the one we remember, and that they can come down here and visit me, and I'll be able to get up there, visit my family up there as well, who I miss very much.
Mark.
Look, Sunil, if Aucklanders aren't able to have Christmas with their friends and family outside of Auckland, then I think there'll be a snap election early next year.
Julianne.
Look, of course, I want people to be able to get out there and travel and not have to worry about COVID. And that's, I think, as a mother of a young child, I will be really worried when the borders open up and COVID really starts to take off, because I have no way of protecting my child other than keeping him home.
Damien, ACT has been calling for the 1st of December as the Freedom Day. What's your verdict?
Well, I think we're getting close to vaccination rates being where we need them to be. We just need the government to have a plan and not to be bonkers about having to get slots to go down the motorway. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And we want maximum well-being for every citizen in the country. So, that's what we'll work to achieve that.
Thank you so much, Duncan, Julianne, Mark, and Damien. It's been really great. I know you've given me more than the allocated time, but it was so really
Animated,
really good. And I like the little banter going on between all of you, and at least we are getting some answers and viewpoints, which is really important. So thank you very much once again for coming on Weekend or on Sunday, and all the best for your trip down to Wellington, and we'll see you again. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Viewers, thank you so much. That was our discussion with the 4 members of parliament. But don't go anywhere, because we've got Ish Sodhi live from Abu Dhabi, waiting to have a few discussions around, will the Blackcaps make it to the semi-final tonight against Afghanistan, or will Afghanistan pull something out of the bag and have a roadblock for the All Blacks to make it to the semi-final? What is it going to be? Are we in or out? We'll discuss this and your questions with Ish Sodhi live from Abu Dhabi after this break.
Obviously comes first.
Welcome back, viewers. Thank you for joining us again. Today is a D-Day for the Blackcaps as they play against Afghanistan. It is quite a crucial match for the Blackcaps if they are to proceed into the semi-finals. So you can consider it as a quarterfinals. And live from Abu Dhabi, we are being joined by Ish Sodhi, who has kindly given us some time. Welcome, Ish.
Yeah, cheers for having me.
Thanks very much for joining us. How does the head feel?
Yeah, it's my head's been okay. I think it was the initial shock when I got hit in the head that kind of took me down for a little bit, but thankfully there's no signs of concussion or delayed concussion, and the coaching staff and the doctor have been very supportive through it.
Yes, I think all the team of 5 million went ouch on the Twitter as it hit, and we were very worried. So thanks very much to all the doctors for showing the support. How's the T20 going from your point of view?
Yeah, I think our World Cup so far has been great. There've been a lot of small, significant contributions across the board, and it's kind of helped us win a few games up to this point. But being such a congested competition with not too many games, every game becomes a pretty crucial match. So obviously against Afghanistan, it's going to be a big game for us, and hopefully some of those small contributions can work, and maybe 1 or 2 people put their hand up and play some match-winning performances.
Sure. Tell me, how did it feel playing against India, given that you took the crucial matches and a man of the match thing? What was it like? What were the emotions going through?
Yeah, it's always a big match playing against India. especially in foreign conditions. I think they're a very tough opposition. They have been very tough opposition for us since 2016 World Cup. So, you want to approach it like any other match, but the quality of opposition is always very tough. And so, to come away with an emphatic win like we did against India, I think during the World Cup was fantastic from us, and a great display across the board from the bowlers and the batsmen. But now we move on to Afghanistan, and hopefully we can do something similar.
Is there anyone in particular that you guys are aware of in the Afghani team?
I think they've got some pretty impressive batsmen across the board. They score quite freely. They like to take the bowlers on, and they've got a formidable spin bowling attack, and they've shown that in all conditions around the world. So, we've got to be really aware of their strengths, but also taking into account what's worked really well for us so far, and trying to do that 5-10% better on the day, I think is going to be very important.
Do you think the toss will be crucial against Afghanistan?
I think so far the toss has been. I think it's been spoken about as quite important because a lot of teams have won batting second in these conditions. So, this is going to be our first match of the tournament in Abu Dhabi. So, we're really big on adapting to conditions and understanding that as quick as we possibly can. So once we get a chance to see the conditions, I'm sure the coaching staff and the captain will make a decision whether we, if we win the toss, whether we bowl or bat first. But I think in these sort of games, it doesn't really matter so much. It's just about how you turn up on the day and if you can play your best cricket.
Yeah. Do you think the traveling between different cities and different playing conditions, the heat, the spin on the wicket, dew, etc., is playing on the minds of the players, or do you just take it one game at a time? How do you prepare? What I want to know is how you prepare for different conditions in a very short period.
It comes down to being tactically aware. The three games, the three grounds that we're playing at all have very different characteristics. Sharjah itself is quite a low and slow wicket, but the boundaries are very, very short. So you have to be onto it with your defensive options, but also because it's quite low, especially for seam bowlers, bringing the stumps into play is really important, and perhaps for spinners bowling side spin. So you're not going to get a heap of turn out of the surface, so you almost need to scoot it through. And so side spin has probably been the one that we've gone to there. We're in Dubai so far that we've played, and there's perhaps been a little bit more bounce, which I think is probably more suited to our bowling attack considering we play in New Zealand. So it'll be interesting to see how Abu Dhabi plays, but I think across the board, doing all of our research and scouting, it looks like it's a pretty good wicket, pretty good batting wicket, and so we're just going to have to be instinctual on the day and prepare as best as we can, and hopefully that means that we can put on a good performance against Afghanistan.
That's right. Now, tell me one thing. Obviously after this, the team is going to India, but does it play on the minds of the players around the MIQ and the bubble, like what the media is reporting about Trent and Colin? Does that play on your minds at all in being away, Corona, all these, or do you yourself come in a bubble in a team and try and block those things? Because after all, we are all humans,
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely empathise with a lot of guys that are, can find it difficult at times, because I think that's a very natural response. You spend so much time in bubbles across the year, and on top of that, you're playing in some pretty high pressure games and performing all over the world, and it's really unique still. It's still very, very new for a lot of us, and hopefully, we can come to a place where safety is obviously comes first, but hopefully we can get past this as best as we can over the coming year or so. But it's relatively new. I think really unique circumstances. I think 2 weeks added onto a tour is always a little bit of something that you have to take into consideration. But I think for me personally, it's been quite good having some good quality friends in the team as well as just teammates. You want to spend as much time with those people as you can. Having coffees here and there always gives you that bit of time, and can't imagine what it was like back in the day when there was no FaceTime and video conferencing with your family and friends, but that's definitely kept it a lot fresher for us.
Sure. And I know you've got to go. team match tonight. But just last one, how did you celebrate Diwali in out from New Zealand, from family and friends? What was so special about there? Did you have few friends around or team and have some laddus and whatnot, sweets? I mean,
Yes.
you're basically playing in another part of the subcontinent.
Yeah, it was actually really good because each night we've been fortunate to have a buffet put on for us, which has been great. And we've got our security liaison Terry. He's actually got some Kashmiri roots, and so he kind of got in the ear of the chef and asked him, instead of having like a cake for dessert or something, can we have some gulab jamun and some gajar halwa and things like that. So it was really cool to kind of have that connection to the Indian roots on Diwali, and obviously family and friends were celebrating back home, and just getting on FaceTime and telling them, we had a couple of nice Indian sweets to celebrate the Festival of Lights. And I think because it's such a multicultural world now, a lot of our Kiwi boys have played a lot of cricket in India, and so they get around it and say Happy Diwali in the morning and things like that. So it always makes you feel pretty at home.
That's great. Hey, thanks very much for your time, Ish. All the best, and good luck, and hopefully the Blackcaps can come back with another trophy. So thank you so much, and take care, and hope the hit goes well.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
Thanks very much. Good night. Cool. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. That was Ish Sodhi joining us live from Abu Dhabi. All the Blacks to all the best to the Blackcaps tonight against Afghanistan. Hope they can go into the semi-finals. Probably a game against England. And my pick so far is a Blackcaps Pakistan final. But it's been a quite interesting day of discussions with our 4 members of parliament about Christmas, about vaccinations, economy, small businesses. We wish you all the best for the coming week, and we do hope that you do get vaccinated, make the most of it, and we can have a happy and a safe Christmas and put everything behind us. So from the team at Indian Weekender, the producer, and myself, Sunil Kaushal, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Good night.